When Sarah told me she was expecting a baby, I truly believed I had never been happier. We had been married for 4 years. Those years had begun with laughter, dreams, and shared hopes for the future, but over time they had slowly faded into quiet dinners, long nights at her office, and an emptiness I could never quite understand. Even so, I believed we could make things right. I believed in our marriage. The moment she shared the news, I remember holding her hand so tightly that it trembled in mine. Tears filled my eyes as I quietly whispered, "We're going to be parents." She smiled, yet something about that smile never reached her eyes. It felt rehearsed, as though she was making herself appear happy instead of truly feeling it. I pushed aside the uneasy feeling growing inside me, telling myself it was nothing more than my imagination. As the months passed, her stomach grew, but the distance between us grew as well. She became increasingly secretive, protecting her phone, changing her passwords, and taking long phone calls in other rooms. Whenever I questioned her, she became defensive, blaming pregnancy hormones or the stress from work. I wanted to trust her. God, I needed to trust her, but one night destroyed everything. She was sleeping beside me when her phone suddenly lit up on the nightstand. A message preview caught my attention. "Can't wait to meet our baby." My hands instantly turned cold and my heartbeat pounded loudly in my ears. I unlocked her phone and scrolled through the messages, hoping, praying that there had to be some terrible misunderstanding. But there it was, dozens of messages from a man named Jason. They were filled with love, shared photos, future plans, and heartfelt promises. He wasn't just someone she had a brief affair with, he was the father of the baby I had believed was mine. The following morning, I confronted her. She broke down immediately, crying, apologizing, saying it had just happened, insisting she still loved me, and claiming Jason meant nothing to her anymore. But her words barely reached me. My world had already fallen apart. I walked out of the house without any destination in mind. I drove until the roads became deserted and eventually found myself at the lake where we used to spend time when we were young, happy, and deeply in love. I sat there through the entire night, numb, watching the moon's reflection ripple across the water. By the time the sun rose, I knew I couldn't do it. I couldn't raise another man's child. Not after a betrayal like this. When she gave birth, I wasn't there. I simply couldn't be. By then, I had already quit my job, sold my car, and disappeared. There was no goodbye, no forwarding address, only silence. I moved across the country, took on a new name, and found work as a mechanic in a quiet coastal town. The ocean became the only companion I had left. Every time I heard a baby cry, it cut through me like a knife. But time did what it always does. It slowly softened the pain. Little by little, I learned how to live again. I found peace in simple routines, quiet mornings, and long walks along the shoreline. I never dated anyone. I never spoke about my past. To everyone in town, I was simply Ryan, the quiet mechanic who loved the sea. 5 years passed that way, peaceful, lonely, but peaceful. Then, on a rainy evening, my past came knocking at my door. I had just locked up the shop when I saw her standing outside in the rain, her hair soaked, her face pale, and an umbrella clutched tightly in her hands. For a brief moment, I thought I was imagining things. "Ryan," she said softly, her voice trembling. Hearing my real name after so many years felt like an old wound being torn open again. "How did you find me?" I asked. She hesitated, her tired eyes filled with exhaustion. I never stopped looking. I didn't invite her inside, but she continued speaking. Between quiet sobs, she told me everything. Jason had abandoned her 2 years after the baby was born, leaving her for another woman. She had raised the little boy alone, carrying both the burden and the shame. Recently, she had finally told her son about me, about the man who had loved him before discovering the truth. Then she spoke the words that shattered me all over again. "He's been asking about you," she whispered. "He thinks you're his dad." I couldn't answer. I simply stood there, staring at her. This was the woman I had once loved more than anything, now standing before me, soaked by the rain, trembling, and haunted by the consequences of her own choices. Part of me wanted to shout, to demand why she had come back after all these years, but another part of me couldn't ignore that old, familiar ache, the pain of love, loss, and everything that could have been. "Why are you here, Sarah?" I finally asked. She stepped a little closer as tears mixed with the falling rain. "Because I can't undo what I did, but he deserves to meet the man who loved him before he was even born." The rain fell even harder, its steady rhythm filling the silence between us. My thoughts raced. I didn't know if I could face that little boy. I also didn't know if I could live with never meeting him. After a long silence, I quietly said, "Tell him, tell him I said hi." She cried even harder before whispering, "He smiles just like you." Maybe she said it to ease my pain. Maybe it was true. I never asked. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to cry as well, not because of the pain, but because I finally felt its weight lifting. That night after she had gone, I found an old photograph of us tucked away inside a drawer. I stared at it for a long time before realizing something I had never understood before. Running away had helped me heal, but facing her, facing the truth, and facing everything I had tried to leave behind had finally set me free. I didn't know if I would ever meet that little boy, but for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of whatever came next. I was no longer the broken man sitting alone beside the lake. I had become someone new, someone finally ready to